It started with a house that looked like every other one on the block. White siding, trimmed hedges, a neat driveway where two cars sat side by side. To anyone passing by, it looked like the perfect picture of suburban peace, the kind of place where neighbors waved over fences and kids rode bikes until sunset. And inside that house lived a man named Daniel Mercer. At 42, Daniel was what most people would call dependable. He'd been married to his wife, Laura, for nearly 15 years. Together, they had 2 kids, a boy in middle school and a little girl who still drew chalk hearts on the driveway. Daniel worked as a project manager for a construction firm in Columbus, Ohio. He wore crisp button-downs, kept his beard neatly trimmed, and always made it home in time for dinner. On weekends, he mowed the lawn, fixed things around the house, and grilled burgers on the back patio. He was the kind of man people trusted instantly, the neighbor who'd shovel your driveway in winter or lend you his tools without a second thought. The kind everyone described as just a good guy. But here's the thing about people like that, sometimes, they're good at being exactly who they want you to think they are. And for nearly a decade, Daniel Mercer was living a lie so massive, so carefully hidden, that when the truth finally came out, even the people closest to him said they didn't recognize the man they thought they knew. It began to unravel on a Thursday morning in November 2021. Laura Mercer woke up to find that Daniel wasn't home. His phone was still on the nightstand, his wallet gone, and his work truck missing. At first, she didn't panic. Daniel sometimes left early for site meetings. Maybe he'd just forgotten his phone. But as the hours passed and calls from his office went unanswered, worry started to set in. By that evening, Laura filed a missing persons report. Police traced the GPS on Daniel's work truck to a small industrial area outside the city, an old warehouse complex mostly used for storage. When officers arrived, they found the truck parked behind one of the buildings, engine cold. The back was locked, and when they pried it open, they found something no one could explain. Inside were several large black plastic containers, sealed shut with duct tape. Each one filled with dirt, rocks, and bones. At first, detectives thought they were animal remains. But a quick look from the coroner changed everything. They were human. Over the next 48 hours, what began as a missing person case exploded into a full-scale homicide investigation. Police questioned Laura, his co-workers, and everyone who knew him. Each of them said the same thing: Daniel was a family man, not the type to get into trouble. He didn't drink, didn't stay out late, didn't have money problems. He was, in every visible way, ordinary. But as detectives dug deeper, they found that Daniel had been leading another life, one his family, friends, and even his employer knew nothing about. It started with his bank records. Every 2 weeks, just days after payday, Daniel had been transferring a few $100s to an account under another name, Erica Dunn. At first, investigators assumed it was an affair. But Erica wasn't his mistress. She wasn't even alive. Erica Dunn had been reported missing in 2014, 7 years earlier, after leaving her job at a diner on the east side of town. Her car was found abandoned by the highway, her purse still inside. She'd simply vanished. The account in her name hadn't been opened by her, it was created by Daniel. Detectives believed he was funneling money through it to fund something he didn't want anyone to see. Police combed through Daniel's records, property files, rental listings, online aliases, and that's when they uncovered the first real crack in his perfect life. For nearly 10 years, Daniel had been renting a second property under a fake identity. A small, one-story house on a forgotten stretch of land outside the city limits. He paid in cash. When detectives arrived, the place looked abandoned. No furniture. No photos. No sign anyone had lived there recently. But in the basement, they found a locked freezer. And inside that freezer, wrapped in heavy plastic, were the remains of 3 women. DNA testing confirmed they were all women who had gone missing between 2012 and 2019. Different ages, different backgrounds, but all from the same general area. Each disappearance had gone cold years ago, with no suspect ever identified. Until now. The news broke like wildfire. The perfect family man, the helpful neighbor, the PTA dad, was now suspected of being a serial killer. Laura was blindsided. In every interview, she said she'd never seen any sign of darkness in him. No temper. No strange behavior. No unexplained absences. But detectives knew better. Over the next several weeks, they pieced together a chilling pattern of behavior, one that showed Daniel had been carefully maintaining a double life for years. During the day, he managed projects and went to family dinners. At night, on the nights when he said he was working late, he drove out to that old rental property. There, he'd bring the women he lured online. Victims who trusted him, sometimes because he offered them work, sometimes because he offered help. And once they were there, they never left. When police finally caught up to Daniel, it wasn't because he turned himself in. He was found 2 days after the truck discovery, over 100 miles away, holed up in a roadside motel near Toledo. He didn't resist arrest. When officers entered the room, he was sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at the wall. When they asked why he did it, he reportedly said, "They trusted me. That's what made it easy." Those 5 words haunted every detective in the room. The trial that followed was one of the most disturbing in Ohio's history. Prosecutors presented evidence showing that Daniel had meticulously documented his crimes, photos, journal entries, even sketches of burial sites. He kept notes on his victims' habits, where he met them, and wrote about what he called the rush of control. In his notebooks, he described himself not as a monster, but as a collector. He said he chose women who wouldn't be missed right away, women with unstable housing, addiction struggles, or jobs that kept them on the move. Women who trusted too easily. And all the while, he kept up the image of the loving husband and father. He went to parent-teacher meetings, posted family vacation photos, volunteered at church. The duality of it was almost cinematic, the perfect mask over the perfect horror. During the trial, Laura Mercer sat silently in the courtroom, flanked by her family. Reporters noted she never looked at him. Not once. When Daniel took the stand, his demeanor didn't change. He was calm, polite, even when describing what he'd done. There was no remorse. Just an eerie detachment. When the verdict came back, guilty on all counts, he barely blinked. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. But even behind bars, he kept his secrets. He refused to say how many victims there really were. Detectives believed there could be more, maybe many more. In the months that followed, investigators went through every construction site Daniel had ever worked on. They dug up old foundations, checked abandoned properties, and searched the woods around his rural rental house. More remains were found, enough to suggest his crimes stretched back nearly 15 years. Some experts called him one of the most methodical serial offenders they'd ever studied. Others just called him evil. But in his letters from prison, Daniel wrote something else. He said he didn't see himself as a killer. He saw himself as a man who finally became who he really was. Today, the Mercer home still stands in that quiet neighborhood in Columbus. Laura and the children moved away shortly after the trial. The new owners painted over the walls, replaced the carpet, tried to erase every trace of what had happened. But some neighbors say they still can't walk past that house without remembering the headlines. The man who mowed their lawns, waved good morning, and told dad jokes at block parties had been hiding a nightmare behind the smile. A man who looked like the definition of normal, but was anything but. And maybe that's the part that's hardest to accept. That sometimes, the monsters don't come from dark alleys or broken homes. Sometimes, they come from the house next door, the one with the trimmed hedges, the family photos, and the man who always seems so kind. Because behind every mask, there's a moment when the truth cracks through. And when it does, you realize you were never looking at a stranger at all. You were looking at the monster in plain sight.